I've talked a lot about Psycho-Pass on the channel before, and mostly about Shogo Makishima and the Sybil system respectively. In fact, I've probably plugged Makishima into at least 10 other videos at this point. I could go on for days about what he brought to the anime, but alone he would have been nothing worth talking on. Outside of Sybil, Akane, and Kogami, he would be like a YouTuber without an audience, just a person yelling at the wall. So today, I think it's time we profile one of the other characters who made Season 1 so great. And from a close decision made by all of you, that's gonna be Shinya Kogami. And because it was so close, Akane's video will come soon if this one does well, but that also extends beyond Season 1, so it'll need a bit more time. Now this video arguably could go beyond Season 1 as well, but I won't be here. I think a lot of what we need to talk about is best encapsulated by Season 1, and I think the ending of Season 1, where Kogami ends there, is really the most fitting ending for him, and he shouldn't have been brought back. Now, of course, I'll go back over the other media Kogami appears in, and maybe make an evolution video if I feel the need for it, but for now, it's just Season 1. With all of that out of the way, let's get into the story of Shinya Kogami, one of fate, solitude, cost, and sin. There's something I never much paid attention to about Kogami all the other times I watched Psycho-Pass, and that's his insistence on bearing sin for those around him. While the phrasing varies from time to time and translation, the idea is the same. Rather than letting others around him perform actions that may hurt them, he takes them on himself. This is prevalent right from episode 1, with all the language about hunting dogs and Kogami himself saying,
"The two of us will hunt the prey, and you'll observe our every move. That's all there is to it."
It's the type of dialogue from and about him that's repeated for the entire run. Although it seems geared as a veteran speaking to a rookie or something degrading from an inspector to an enforcer, there's a bit more to it. He's not acting this way to hurt her, but to try and save her from ever being hurt. This is very apparent in how he acts as well. Again, right from the start. He moves ahead of Masaoka and Akane in their introductory case, which seems like him just being a loner and going off to work on his own. But we see him maintain contact throughout and eventually bring down the criminal using the pair as bait. Seems simple enough, he was just using Akane and Masaoka to do his job. But is that the whole story? Using them as bait seems like a cold strategy, putting them right in the face of danger, but it also does something else. It prevents them from being able to kill the target. That job becomes Kogami's solely. This is what he wants, saying later to Akane,
"If I have it my way, you won't have to take anyone's life. I'll carry that weight."
We can also see this tactic again in the drone case in episode 3, where he draws all the ire onto himself. And again against Senguchi, where he uses Yuki as bait rather than involving her in any other way. Additionally, the few times where he can't shield Akane, we see visible displeasure on his face, in addition to the slight pushback or hesitation to respond he has. He hates that she seems to start following his obsession because he knows what that kind of obsession must lead to. Nearly 100% of the time, his role is trying to keep Akane pure and safe, with only one major exception that we'll cover later. But this is Kogami using his position to its fullest extent. As an enforcer, there's not much else he can do. He's trapped at base, only able to move under the watch of his owners. We do know that he wants to do more though. An injured and recovering Kogami lets this slip to Akane once in episode 2, where he remarks,
"I've forgotten what being a detective is actually about. Working for a boss like you, I might be able to act like a real detective instead of just taking orders like a dog."
This never really materializes, however. Instead, when the specimen case rears its head once more, he becomes a hunter obsessed with killing its prey above anything else. He easily reneges on this fleeting change, but is it all because of revenge? I don't think that covers 100% of it. An obvious additional answer is Sybil. He can't be anything else because the god of this world didn't decree that he was allowed to be. They prefer him in his cage, or at times even prefer him dead. And that's all true, he doesn't quite have a workaround for that. But once again, I don't think the full story is on the surface here. If he was somehow to become free again, able to live a normal life, he also has to carry the burden of life under Sybil, his psychopaths. He wouldn't be able to just dispatch criminals and threats like we see him do. In fact, it isn't just that normal life, even as an inspector, prevents him from doing this, but that being an enforcer actively encourages him to do it. It actively encourages him to bear the sin for others. Being anything more would be directly contrary to all of that we just went over. The less of a hunting dog he becomes, the less he's able to bear sin for others. And especially as he grows more attached to Akane, that's something he wants less and less to give up. But that's not the only reason he accepts this position. I think Kogami is somewhat motivated by fear as well, but a fear of himself. He is a strong man, and I believe him 100% that he trains so hard to keep the weight of his actions where it should be, a physical representation of his sin, if you will. And so that he can always be strong enough to take the hit for someone around him, and so that he's always stronger than the weapon he holds, so it can never overtake him. All of those things are true, but all of this training makes him more dangerous as well. It's impossible to miss that he enjoys the hunt. Fighting a massive drone corrupted for the sole purpose of killing him, he's smiling, enthralled by the action he gets to partake in. He even admits to Ginoza that once they're on the trail of Makishima, he actually feels good for the first time in a while. And look at his final words to Shogo, some of the best in the entire anime, that he's unsure if he'll be able to resist finding a replacement rival. Kogami is intelligent and cunning, but most of all vicious when push comes to shove. And I think he's afraid of that, of the hunting dog being unleashed. That's another reason for him to accept his Sybil-designated position. It keeps the so-called beast chained up. When it takes him over fully, he even abandons one of his core ideals. He stops bearing the sins for others. One time he does. When he asks Akane to kill, one time only, is when he's not able to kill Makishima himself. He tells her to bash him over the head with a helmet, a barbaric method of killing him. In this moment, he gives up entirely everything that he was existing with her for before that. He never wanted her to kill like he has, but in that moment, something was more important to him. Seeing his prey be killed, getting his revenge. Killing Makishima also lets him subside another likely area of fear. This isn't just about ending the intensity of the hunt, but also putting to rest their similarities. We know they're both intelligent men who can trash talk philosophy and understand the other's moves. This is apparent in their very first few lines to each other, and reinforced later when Saiga asks Kogami if they are in fact similar, and his only response is to say,
He has some traits I understand.
But let's dig deeper than that. Generally, Kogami keeps the conversation with Makishima to a minimum, an impressive feat given the number of scenes that are just the man conversing. Clearly there's an element of his revenge, the anger and hatred of his loss that plays into this. He wants to kill the man who indirectly took Sasayama from him. But as he learns his rival's motivation and begins to build a profile of him, I think he grows afraid of how much he understands the man. Even when they disagree or don't seem to directly agree, it's mostly just them applying the same idea to different situations, objects, or terms. It's like debating how to bridge a gap. You might argue for style or comfort or extra safety, but you want the same thing, starting and ending in the same place. You just emphasize different aspects of the problem. Look at how each of them understands the lack of choice and free will under Sybil. Kogami expresses this to Akane before leaving, how the world is now about convenience and immediacy. They get this through risk, which is likely a reference to the recent riots. How they prove that there was no real safety and people could choose to abandon it so easily. Also the risks of increased stress and what that means, or the risk of working a job that incurs these risks. But they're so spread out, these risks, that everyone was able to ignore them, closing their eyes and telling themselves it was safe and right, when they knew it wasn't. Makishima, in his final thoughts, expresses something similar about immediacy.
Any item, any piece of knowledge, any relationship can be replaced with a simple search and a click.
And his actions throughout the series are clearly against Sybil for creating a lack of freedom and choice. They frame their ideas on Sybil differently, but they're the same thing applied to modified situations and terms. Kogami focuses on choice and risk, Makishima on connection, but they each see the same causes and effects of this oppressive system. Moving forward, think about the importance Kogami places behind the Dominator, how he sees it as they don't kill, but the holder of it does. And also think about the amount of work he does to countenance himself with that fact. He has to be stronger than that weapon and bear its sin. To view it this way requires nearly absolute resolve. Now, doesn't Makishima feel the same way? He says,
Feel it, the importance of life resting gingerly against your fingertip. That's the weight of decision and free will.
He believes judgment should be done by those with resolve, who kill on their own will. It's an important act that you have to be ready for and worthy of. Look at it, they each understand the importance of taking a life and feel the same way on it. They only apply the idea to different weapons, the weapons most likely to hurt them. A big addition to this can also be seen in Makishima's pawns. Now in my last Psychopaths video we went over them in depth, so I'll keep it more brief here. But check out the card on screen if you want to see that Makishima focused video. It's some of my best work and I highly recommend it to dig deeper into Psychopaths. But back on track, the two do react oddly similarly to Shogo's pawns. Kogami deduces easily that Masatake was the Avatar imposter and puts quite nicely and succinctly how his antagonist counterpart feels about it. That he's just a fan pushing what he wants onto the avatars, lacking originality and resolve for anything real. The very thing Makishima discards him for. This is the same thing with Rikiko. Kogami sees clearly that there's no real message to her work because it lacks originality. It's simply a copy of her father's placed for attention. Again, the very same reason Makishima throws her away. They have a similar distaste for the copycat work that those individuals did. Kogami might not voice it in the same way, but he perfectly summarizes why Makishima grows tired of both of them. He understands them the same way as his rival. These were people who were given exceptional means, and they squandered it on murder and attention. This understanding goes even deeper. One of the rare talks they have is in the final 2 episodes mid-combat. Here they call each other out on solitude. Now, Kogami pushes that Makishima is just a whiny child, mad that society left him alone. Phrasing aside, he doesn't quite deny this, but instead remarks how Kogami is just like him, a man that no one understands. They didn't get his anger or his idea of justice, so he left behind both friend and foe to fulfill the purpose that he gave himself. Kogami for sure keeps away from others for the most part, so we don't need to belabor the point that he's a bit of a loner. But there's something else feeding into it. Him being an expert profiler is very relevant here. This skill means he's able to know someone without the target knowing him. Based on actions, evidence, hard fact, he can assemble the reasoning in his head and determine why they act how they do. He's able to know people better than they might know themselves at times. And this very easily creates a disconnect between him and other people. He doesn't need to engage with them to learn about them. For him, it's just like breathing to figure someone out. So he doesn't need to bother. And what he sees more often than not is unoriginal people. Kanahare, Masatake, and Rikika all offer no real challenge for him. Their psyches are just speed bumps. In the same way, they all failed Makishima's tests, offering nothing for him either. They're both in the same situation where no one quite presents something worthwhile for them. Sure, Kogami has Akane who is presenting some sort of thought and something worthwhile, and Makishima has Che, but at the end of the day, they're still not on the same level. This is obvious for both the pairs, until they're revealed to each other. Makishima sees someone who may finally understand why he's doing all this, and Kogami sees a challenge for once, a potential true hunt he's been waiting years for, in a man who's able to place the cost of choice onto others. And this cost of choice, this is the one thing that really separates the pair. Kogami and Makishima are exceptionally similar, But Shogo's criminal asymptomism changes something. He understands the cost placed on individualism differently than someone who can be judged, like Kogami. For one half of this equation, being an individual, being distinct and unique is just natural. He doesn't need to conform to hue checks and cymatic scans, so his actions are undampened by those things. For him, it's clear that normal citizens are missing something, a splendor of the soul stolen by a corrupt system. Along with isolation, that is the reality of cost in his world. Now, for someone raised his whole life within Sybil, the cost is more on the individual. He's the weird one, not those who followed more closely to the god of conformity. The weight of his decisions, the danger they place him in, are all on him and no one else. Likely another reason why he tries so hard to keep them from befalling anyone else. He understands them better than most. He even acknowledges this difference to a degree when he tells Akane the world needs more people like her. Because if it was full of her, there would be no need for Sybil or enforcers or inspectors, for any of them. This shows he recognizes his own breaking of the norms as just that. So he has no need to free people like Makishima feels. People like him only lose their freedom, not gain it. The real difference between them, the thing that shaped their views to apply these same ideas in different ways, was one thing: criminal asymptomism. Had you swapped them, placed Makishima in society and Kogami outside of it, it may have very well played out the same way, with them just swapping sides. It's like double pendulums with the slightest difference in starting position. They're nearly identical, but one small change puts them on wildly different courses. And this brings us to fate, or purpose, you could say. Kogami and Makishima alike express their thought that fate kept them together. Kogami can't see anyone else killing Makishima, and he can't see anyone but Kogami killing him. Clearly, the former enforcer wants to for revenge. Sasahara was a close friend to him, and that shouldn't be understated in this reasoning. But it's also in his ideals. His protection of innocence, this bearing of sin, means he has to do it. If they can't arrest him and the Dominators won't judge him, then there's only one solution left. And he'd never let anyone else pull that trigger and stain their hands. This is his duty, his role. He wants more, but more only means he can't keep what he has. So Kogami accepted that this is what he is, a hunting dog letting others stay pure. And no other dog would cut it in this situation. This is the most cunning prey to ever exist in the modern era, and he's one of the few people able to take Makishima on. His drive, this thrill of the hunt, is necessary to take down such a man. A counterpart so similar, he doesn't just profile the enemy, but truly understands him, like a reflection more than anything else. Each having nothing to lose but solitude. Solitude incurred from their very makeup. Solitude as part of the cost of the very reason only they are fit to combat one another. It seems slightly cheesy when Akane narrates that they were destined to meet and fight like this, but there never could have been another way. A pair of near brothers that the world decided must be on opposite sides. Anyway, that's all I have for this one. Ended up being a bit longer than I thought, but that just tends to happen when I talk about Psycho-Pass. If you want any more Psycho-Pass, I'll have some more videos on screen here in a little bit. But before that, I want to remind you that I have a link to my Discord in the description below as well. So if you want to discuss some anime with me, talk to some other fans, or just hang out, it's a cool place for that, and it'll be listed down below. If you like this video, consider leaving a like so that I know to keep making more in the future, or a comment telling me what you thought, if you thought I got it right or wrong, or anything you thought on Psycho-Pass, because interacting with you all down there in the comments is one of the best parts of doing this, because I get to see kind of that I'm actually provoking some thought or anything like that, which is why I do this. This is also a very important one to like and share and comment on, because me making an Akane video kind of depends on this one. I want to make it, and I love making Psycho-Pass videos, but if this kind of Psycho-Pass profile doesn't do well, then I can't quite justify spending all this time to make a video like this on Akane. So if you want to see this type of video on Akane, specifically, leave a like, leave a comment, so we can get this one pushed up a little bit and see some success to keep it going in the future. I kind of hate having to ask that and kind of show how things work, but it's the sad reality of making YouTube videos. Besides that, I think that's all I have to say. So those videos should be on screen by now, and I'll stop rambling because this has been a long-ass outro, because I do that, and I'll just let you get back on with your day. So thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon. Thought I fucked it up at the end there. I mean, I did, but, you know, never mind.